the Lakers missed the play-in tournament. And normally when you say that, of course, that means they're one of the top 6 seeds in the Western Conference. But it takes some doing to not be one of the 20 teams to have a chance to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy once the regular season is over. It takes a lot of doing. And normally you got to purposely tank to get in that spot. And I proffer to say the Lakers did not do that. They earned every last bit of their being on the couch. And here to talk about it from The Athletic, man who covers the team and has written so many terrific stories and columns and opinion pieces on them, Bill Oram from The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Bill?
I'm great, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so why? Why did this happen? Why?
I think hubris comes as kind of the first reason before we start unpacking injuries and, kind of the malaise of the season. But there was a real arrogance I think the Lakers had coming into this year that you could tear down a roster and put 11 new guys around 3 superstars and that it would work because you're the Lakers, because you have the best top-end talent in the NBA in LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and that will work. And even if you go back to the preseason, the Lakers were very casual about things. They went 0-6 in the preseason, which in and of itself is not an indicator of where things are going, but they also did not look good. Even when it was like Russ and AD were on the court in the preseason, that did not look good at all. The supporting pieces didn't look good. And when I remember talking to Carmelo Anthony early in the year, and he's like, listen, it might take us all year to figure it out, but it's okay. We're veterans. We can use the season to be playing our best by the end of the year. And that was sort of the mantra of this team the whole way through, except for you never saw them getting better. You never saw them moving toward becoming a better team by the end of the year. And obviously injuries played a huge part in that. The Lakers didn't win consecutive games, however, until the last 2 games of the season from January 7th. So that's 3 months that they couldn't put it in gear for more than one night at a time. So tons of reasons. I mean, everybody has a share of the blame. Frank Vogel already, paid the price. But, there's a lot of reflection, I think, to be done within the Lakers, not just from how rosters are assembled, but to how decisions are made, who's calling shots, what they want their identity on the court to be, because that has changed every single year LeBron James has been here.
Well, I mean, you mentioned LeBron. Let's just hit him right off the bat here. When he says the season was not a failure, what do you think he means by that?
I think he means it in a very abstract way, which was everybody competed, everybody was trying hard to make it work. But, he's just wrong. I mean, it's an abject failure from any measure, right? I mean, you play to win championships. You play, Rob Pelinka sits at a press conference when they bring in Russell Westbrook and says the Lakers are obsessed with winning championships, winning their 18th championship. So not even making it into the postseason to have a chance represents a failure. I think LeBron is basically saying the failure was out of their hands. When he misses 26 games, when AD misses nearly half of the season, other guys who were hurt and in and out of the lineup, you can't blame the team for not winning when they weren't on the court together. But you also had a team that was heavily dependent on players over 35 years old. You had super high expectations for a guy like Trevor Ariza. You brought in a third star in Russell Westbrook, who, even if you thought you knew something that everyone else didn't, the prevailing take around the league was that was not a good fit for Russ, that was not going to work, and that the Lakers made themselves worse by trading 2 or 3, depending on how you feel about Montrezl Harrell, really valuable role players plus a first-round pick for Russell Westbrook. That was not a surprise when that did not work early in the season. It wasn't just the injuries. This was a team that was not going to achieve the success by their own standard of success in almost any situation.
So Westbrook yesterday, too, Bill Oram, was talking about his relationship with Vogel. And is it just as simple Vogel didn't want him? Because he was talking about needing to prove himself to a coach that clearly knows Russell Westbrook's game and his resume and what he brings to the equation. and wound up, if I'm not mistaken, leading the team in minutes played and games and things of that nature. So he did get out there, even though there were times where he was benched. What was the Vogel Westbrook relationship that might have been the heart of everything that we're talking about right here? Bill?
Yeah, I mean, the best ability is availability, right? So Russell Westbrook played in, but until they shut guys down at the end of the year, he'd only missed one game all season. So he was, the guy who was going out there every single night. And, as losses mounted up, whether LeBron, AD were in and out of the lineup, the guy who was out there kind of at the front of it every single night was Russell Westbrook. So I understand why he feels like, a lot of this got pinned on him. But, without knowing this directly, I would interpret that it is fair to say that Frank Vogel was not happy that Russell Westbrook was added to the mix. You had a really awkward basketball fit from the beginning. And so Frank Vogel was asking Russell Westbrook to adapt his game in ways that he had never had to before to fit on a team with LeBron, who's going to be the predominant ball handler, and Anthony Davis, who also needs the ball in his hands. And Russ was going to need to do a lot of things that he wasn't used to doing: screening, spotting up, getting out of the way, playing off ball, and that really was a really awkward, sort of there were growing pains. And Russ, he said yesterday that he's never not done what a coach asked him to do. My coaching sources said that Russ was very reluctant to do a lot of the things he was asked to do, that he was not receptive to feedback, that he wouldn't look at the clips that he was given to sort of help him along the way. So there was a real divide between what the coaching staff was wanting from Russ in an effort to make this, sort of fundamentally clunky fit work, and what Russ felt he could do to actually help. And that's why I think the Russ problem was so dominant, because if you're Frank Vogel and you've only got 24 hours in the day to think about your team or think about making your team better, how many hours of those are being spent on Russell Westbrook? 15, 16? Mm-hmm. So and at some point you have to sleep. So when do you think about the other issues? When do you start thinking about rotations? When do you think about, Avery Bradley, Malik Monk, Austin Reeves? And this is not to say that, Frank Vogel didn't do as thorough of a job as he could. I believe he did. But I think that there was so much time spent trying to untangle the Russell Westbrook mess that took energy away from, finding solutions to the other issues the Lakers encountered.
Bill Oram of The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. And as we turn the page to start focusing on what's next, I'll just read out the headline of your latest story or column, if you will, on The Athletic that I suggest everybody read. Lakers' shameful handling of Frank Vogel should be warning to potential replacements. I give you the floor on what that means, Bill.
So it goes deeper than the way Frank Vogel was fired, which I hated. Hated that it was first reported basically at the buzzer of the Lakers' final game of the year, which, by the way, was a pretty feel-good moment, all things considered. The players hadn't even left the court yet, and there was a report that Frank Vogel was going to be fired and would be informed as early as Monday. I hated that Frank then had to go sit in a press conference room and answer questions about that. I hated that that he didn't hear it directly from his superiors first. I hated that it took away from the night that guys like Mac McClung, Austin Reeves, Malik Monk, Mason Jones, guys who got their moment in the sun because of this season, that they had that opportunity to kind of have a little bit of shine from their head coach taken away from them. So I just really hated that Frank Vogel was left kind of flapping in the wind for about 12 hours before he was finally fired. Had to fly home with that report hanging over his head and no clarity. I don't think that's the way business should be done. And whether it was directly the Lakers' intent to have that reported then or not, in my opinion, once the decision is made to fire the coach, you as the organization or as the general manager and Rob Pelinka are the custodian of that information. And so what happens with that information until it gets delivered directly to the coach who's going to be fired is your responsibility. And the Lakers, and to wit Rob Pelinka, failed and I think really embarrassed the organization with the way that went down on Sunday night. But to the broader point, Rich, the Lakers have really not valued coaching going back to the end of Luke Walton's tenure. And it's bigger than, whether you think Luke Walton's a good coach and should have been fired or whether Frank Vogel's a good coach and should have been fired. You remember when the Lakers hired Frank Vogel, he was their third choice at best. They tried to hire Tyronn Lue, who balked at the idea of a 3-year contract, felt like that was beneath him. Monty Williams also was not picking up what they were putting down in terms of years and commitment. But Frank Vogel was a guy who was, had been fired in Orlando. It was coming off of 2 losing seasons in Orlando, and he was willing to take a 3-year contract. And I think we kind of think of that as a make-good deal. Like you are kind of somebody who's willing to take a little bit of a lesser deal for what, coaching the Lakers could potentially net you. And Frank Vogel made good on that, and he won a championship in his very first year. Could have been Coach of the Year, I think, that season if awards were voted on. After the bubble, I think he probably would have been the Coach of the Year that season. And to me, it just that earned that he did not get a contract extension that offseason. He coached the Lakers the next year. And then at that point, he's up for a contract extension. He's coached the best defense in the league the previous season, and the Lakers gave him a 1-year contract extension. A 1-year contract extension in the NBA might as well be your walking papers. It's not a vote of confidence. It's not a show of support. It doesn't tell your locker room that we believe in our coach. And to me, I think that dug the ground out from underneath Frank Vogel from before this season even started, and sent the message that as soon as anything went awry, he was expendable. And that's why you started hearing, murmurs about Frank Vogel losing his job as early as November. If the Lakers had believed in Frank Vogel more and given him more support, a coach who is, fundamental to the organization or central to the vision of the organization can survive down years or injury-laden seasons. And that's where the logic of all this sort of, doesn't track. If it's the injuries that derailed the season, then why are you firing the coach? If it's the roster construction that derailed the season, then why are you firing the coach? And the answer is because, somebody needs to take it. And in this case, the guy who doesn't have a lot of years left on his contract, very intentionally has to take it. And so, listen, the Lakers are a prestige job. They're going to have guys. They're going to be candidates who want it. But I do think the Lakers have to do some serious reflection about what they want, what kind of destination they want to be for coaches. If they want to keep getting, coaches who are sort of outside of the top tier of candidates, coaches that they can push around a little bit, coaches who will acquiesce to being told who is going to be on their staff and having Rob Pelinka and Kurt Rambis in their coaches' meetings, they can go find, those sorts of candidates, and then those candidates should be prepared to be treated poorly and fired in 2 or 3 years. But if they want to really take a step forward as an organization, they will step up the support they give their coaches, the autonomy they give their coaches, and the security they give their coaches. And that has just not been their philosophy in Rob Pelinka's tenure as a basketball executive.
Well, I mean, I think you're kind of hitting on that, Bill, as we wrap this up here, is like who's going to be making the decision, right? I mean, there's Jeannie Buss, there's Rob Pelinka, there's, as you mentioned, or the people who are referred to around in this town as the Rambi, both Rambuses, right? Then you have LeBron, who one would think, your colleague Sam Amick there at The Athletic saying that LeBron would be, The Athletic tweeting out, LeBron James would be very enthused by the prospect of Mark Jackson landing the job. Is that his way of telling everybody this is who at King James would give the blue check mark to? And then how does that all work together? Right. I would
say that LeBron did not get his coach the last time around. By the way, Ty Lue was the preferred candidate of Camp James, and LeBron never threw the Lakers under the bus for bungling that coaching search, at least from LeBron's standpoint. So I'm very curious to see how much weight his word carries this time. So you would think a lot, but all those pieces you're talking about, the Lakers would describe it as collaborative, right? That everybody has a voice, everybody's a stakeholder, and that makes it, a great place to work. And I think other people, at least on the outside, and I know of some people on the inside who feel this way too, where it's too many cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lack of structure, a lack of organization, and ultimately a lack of accountability. And that is where I think the Lakers have really gone most strayed in the last, to go all the way back to the passing of Dr. Jerry Buss, who who left this to his children to kind of carry on.
So I guess last question is, what's the timing on this? And I'm assuming as well, whoever's coming in, that it's the same roster, right? I mean, like what?
Oh yeah. Why would you break this team up, Rich?
No, but I'm serious. But no, I'm the reason why I'm saying that is you already hear LeBron say, just 21 games for me, AD, and Russ, and even though there were 11 and 10 in those 21, I assume he just assumes you give them twice, 3 times as many cracks at it, they'll be better than one game above 500. The season's not a failure. I think part of him is sitting there thinking the injuries really did him in. Like, he wasn't available. And so I'm assuming, right, like they can't move Russ, that this is the way it is. Whoever comes in, you're going to have to do a better job of figuring out this mix than Vogel did.
I mean, you can put a new paint job on a car that's broken down. The car isn't going to drive any better. I think LeBron is sort of polishing the narrative on the season he's putting behind him. I don't think that if you had, gave LeBron James truth serum and you said, do LeBron, AD, and Russ work together for next year? Should that be the direction of this team? I do not believe he would say yes. I think that LeBron James will actively work behind the scenes to help Rob Pelinka find a way to relocate Russell Westbrook. I don't think Russ will be back. I don't think Russ wants to be back. And I don't think, despite what LeBron said yesterday, LeBron wants him back either. I think there is a very clear understanding that this was a partnership that did not work out and needs to be addressed. So I think you will see LeBron and Anthony Davis back next year. I think those are the pillars of this organization. I think that the Lakers would love to have a third star. I think that they learned that it's not going to be Russell Westbrook. So I think, by whatever means necessary, I think it will not be Russell Westbrook.
What do you hypnotize Leon Rose? How do you get rid of Westbrook? What do you do?
I mean, I do think that Russell Westbrook is an expiring contract in the NBA in a league where that really matters. And not only is he an expiring contract, he's a huge expiring contract. So if you are a team like Indiana or Charlotte that has a couple of guys who are under contract for three years at $20-some million a year, and you are not trying to win right now, it makes no sense for Charlotte to be paying Gordon Hayward. Even better, it makes no sense for Charlotte to be paying Terry Rozier $20-some million through 2025. Like, that is not their timeline. That doesn't make any sense. But what you can do if you're Charlotte is you can package Rozier and go Gordon Hayward for Russell Westbrook and maybe a draft pick because the Lakers are desperate, and you suddenly have that $47 million in cap space in the summer of 2023. And that looks like it fits your timeline a whole lot more. Same with Indiana. So I do think that expiring deal is more valuable than we give it credit for, or when we talk about who would want Russ. I don't think anyone wants Russell Westbrook at this point. I think there are very few teams that look at him as the player that transforms a team into where they want to go. But that contract becomes very, very appealing. But the problem is everyone in the league knows the situation the Lakers are in. And so I don't think, so I think a team like Charlotte or Indiana could then, force the Lakers to include a pick as well. And just because of the desperate situation they're in. So the Lakers are going to be at a disadvantage in trying to come off the Russell Westbrook deal, but I do think it can be done.
Bill, thanks for the time, man. Let's do this again real soon. I have a feeling this is going to heat up. Thanks for the call. Thank you.
My pleasure,
and the
Rich.
knowledge.
Thank you.
Bill Oram, I'm smarter for that conversation. Hope you are too. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.